Hi, my name is Harvey Ferris, and this video is about the restoration of my 1963 Jaguar E-Type fixed head coupe. I started the restoration in 2020 and completed it in the spring of 2025, at which point I took it to several Jaguar Club of North America Concours events where it was shown in champion class. It currently has a national score of 99.85, and it is a very nice restoration, if I do say so myself. Sometimes when you see these cars on the show field, it's a little hard to understand some of the details that went into the restoration. And frankly, some things are just hard to see without referring back to photos that were taken during the restoration process. So this will basically be a slideshow with commentary that documents some of the details of the restoration as it occurred over the last 5 years. I hope you enjoy it. By the way, there are close to 100 articles on my website, newhillgarage.com, about the restoration of this car. And if you're interested in in-depth information about the restoration, I'd encourage you to take the time to check that out. Now I'm going to talk about how I acquired this car. Basically, back in the early 2000s, I used to read the want ads every day looking for interesting vehicles, and I saw an ad for a Jaguar E-Type, and when I called the owner, it turned out that he was quick to explain that the car was totally disassembled and that he was selling me a kit car as is. I was very interested, and I went out to look at the car, and one of the main things that attracted me to it was the body shell was totally exposed, and I could tell that it was rust-free for all intents and purposes. So we struck a deal, and I brought my truck and trailer to his place and loaded everything up and brought the car back to my house. I wasn't able to do a whole lot with it initially because I was busy with life, but there's a picture here of the engine, picture of the bonnet, picture of the bunch of parts that I laid out on tables to help me understand what I had. And I basically went through, with my engineer's hat on, I went through and put together a spreadsheet to describe all the parts that I had and look for parts that I was missing. And then that gave me a starting point. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the heritage certificate and the concept of matching numbers. When Jaguar built cars back in the 50s and the 60s, they kept handwritten records of each car with some basic information about the cars. This information has resided with Jaguar over the years and is currently in the hands of the Jaguar Daimler Heritage Trust in the UK. For a small fee, if you send them the basic information about your car, they will give you a nice form suitable for framing that has some very interesting information on it that you can use as you're going to be restoring your car. The Heritage Certificate has the model number, the body style, the specification, chassis number, engine number, body number, gearbox number, the exterior color, the interior color, the date built, the date dispatched, the main distributor in the United States, and the first owner. So this interesting information. In general, you have to have possession of the car and prove that you own it and that you have the data plate. And from the data plate, you supply them some information and they send you back their heritage certificate. The data plate on Series 1 E-Types is on the just in front of the firewall on the passenger side under the fuel filter. You can pick out the numbers from the data plate and compare them to the numbers on the car if you know where you're looking. The first number we're going to look at is the car number. For my car, this is 888055, and it will be found on the what most people call the picture frame. I've given you a diagram above to show where that number would be stamped on the car. The engine number shows up in two places. One of them is pretty easy to get to see, which is if you look at the spark plug valley and go all the way to the front, there's a horizontal surface that's part of the cylinder head, and you will see the engine number stamped in there. The engine number is also down on the block. This is much harder to see. It's down on the passenger side, just above the oil filter canister. But sometimes if you hold a cell phone down in there and shoot a horizontal shot, you can get a picture of it. The transmission number is quite a bit more difficult to get at. To see the transmission number, you would have to take the center console out of the car and look down in at that location. By the way, the transmission on this car is not matching numbers. The transmission from this car came from a roughly 1970 vintage E-Type. It's a much better transmission in that it's fully synchro-meshed, and it's been totally rebuilt with parts that are available for that transmission, but it is not the transmission that came with the car. There's a little bit of a story regarding the body number on the car, and the body numbers are on a metal tag that's riveted. For this generation of E-Type, the tag was inside the rear passenger compartment, better known as the boot, on the driver's side, in behind the upholstery, kind of down below where the gas filler is on the outside of the car. Metal tag with 4 digits on it. On my car, and I have some, you're looking at a picture here, the metal tag has blue crayon scribbled over it, and then another body number has been written above the top of it. I didn't understand this originally, but Dr. Mueller, who wrote one of the seminal books about Jaguar E-Types, told me that they couldn't really be bothered to pull the bodies out of the warehouse in the number that they were numbered by, in this case, maybe Abbey panels. So they just grabbed the most convenient body and then they gave it a new body number, and on it went down the assembly line. So my body number is 4955. It's kind of hard to see it in the picture, but it is there. The same body number would have been used in particular on upholstery items. Here's a picture of a piece of upholstery with the body number 4955 on the back side in yellow crayon. So that's the body number, and it is very difficult to see it at this point because the upholstery is glued up over top of it. When I had a chance to purchase this E-Type, one of the things that excited me was the fact that it looked like there was little or no rust on the body shell of the car. After an experience of my first E-Type, a 67 2+2, which had extensive corrosion in the lower third of the body shell, it was very interesting to me to be able to start with a project that didn't immediately require a lot of panel repair. When Jaguar built these cars, I believe the painting process was state-of-the-art for the day. Referring to some promotional literature from the day, the body shell was phosphated, dipped in an anti-corrosion product, got 2 coats of primer, a sealer coat, and 2 coats of synthetic enamel. But I don't think they envisioned these cars would still be on the road and desirable 60 years later. And many of them out there have succumbed to rust. But like I said, this one looked to be pretty good, and I was excited. So flashing forward a number of years, in the early 2020 time period, I retained a mobile media blaster fellow who came out with his rig and proceeded to bead blast, sand blast. I'm not quite sure what the media was, but he went over every panel in the car. The body shell, the doors, the bonnet portions, every part. And then he left and I did an inspection, And I was pleasantly surprised. There was no significant rust in the car. There was certainly some surface rust, and in the pictures you see some dark stuff. There's also some glue remnants that kind of like refused to come off from being blasted. But generally the car looked pretty good. What I did find was that there probably had been some rust in the footwells, and someone had done a very robust repair, but they did not use factory panels. They just used flat sheets of plate steel. Here's a picture of the footwell, which is just a flat slab, and the toe board area at the front of the footwell. Wanting this to be as it came from the factory, I knew that those would not be acceptable, so I proceeded to do more work to get them whipped into shape. This started before this media blasting, where I cut the old parts out, and then after the media blasting, I put in the new parts. I've started adding links to my website and the subtitles of some of the pictures. There's just a whole lot of information in the articles on the website that I can't squeeze into a reasonable length video. So if you're at all interested, my website is a little confusing, I'll admit that. But if you go to the website and switch on the spyglass or the search icon and type in the phrase that I've given you, it'll take you to the article that you want to read about this particular subject. Another area that we did find some corrosion was on the engine frame rails. Now these are renowned for rusting out. They rust from the inside out. And I found some corrosion pinholes on those. And I proceeded to order brand new frames from a well-known fabricator of engine frames, E-Type Fabs in the UK. Here's a picture of the frames as I got them ready to be installed on the car. Another area that was pretty sketchy was the bonnet front. It had been hit clearly more than a few times. It had been poorly repaired. There was holes. I did contact a fellow who had done body work for 40 years, and he pecked around on it, but at some point realized it was just a lost cause. So I did buy a new bonnet center section, shown here, from S&G Barrett. And this gave us a fresh bonnet opening for the air coming in. So we were happy to do that. At this point, I got the media blaster guy back out, and I had him just do a light dusting on the entire car on the rotisserie. And then immediately we wheeled it into my paint shop, and we got a coat of epoxy primer on all the fresh media blasted surfaces. If you go back to the website article about this phase, you'll see everything cleaned up really nice. And then it immediately got epoxy primer. Because modern paints do like to be applied within fairly short time intervals so that they can bond chemically, I went ahead and applied base coat and clear coat to the bottom and the inside of the car. The epoxy primer, if you let it go for more than 24 hours or so, you have to sand it before you repaint it. But if you get to it quickly, then it all is happy and melts together, and you get a nice paint job. So at this point, I had color coat on the bottom of the car and the inside of the car. Oh, I didn't realize it at the time, but this was just the beginning of a long slog, which will be the subject of my next section of this web article. Okay, in the previous section, we discussed the fact that I took the body shell and all the other parts really down to bare metal, and I did the body work, which involves maybe welding and grinding and cutting, but I got the body work done, and then I got everything re-sandblasted, and I quickly painted it with epoxy primer. So at this point, the underside of the car and the inside were actually painted with the final opalescent gold sand color, but I still had the exterior of the body to put together
and get it painted. What I'm going to do for the rest of this video is I'm going to throw up some pictures. I looked at my website and there's over a dozen articles about this phase of the project to get the car fully painted. So if you follow along with this, I'm going to put in some key search terms that you can use on the homepage of my website, which will take you to articles that kind of follow along chronologically with the paint work that was done. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a running commentary as we go along here. So the paint job at this point becomes a matter of putting filler, polyester filler on the car, and then sanding it back with sanding boards to get a smooth surface. A modern technique is polyester filler can actually be sprayed on with a gun, and there's the more traditional filler that you apply with a small trowel. But in all the cases, what we're trying to do is get the sheet metal just as flat as possible. Kind of like Kansas is really not flat when you get out there. A sheet metal body is not really flat when you get down to fine values. A 5 or 10 thousandths of an inch dip in the sheet metal will show up if you paint it and then like shine a light on it. So paint and body guys will tell you that prep, it's all in the prep. And what you wind up doing is putting on coats of filler and then polyester or urethane high build primer and sanding 90% of it back off onto the floor. So eventually you do reach a point where you're starting to look at the car. What we do is put a little water or mineral spirits on the car that make to kind of get a feel what it's going to look like when it's painted. And you're looking for high spots and low spots. Another technique is to use guide coats, which I think I mentioned before. But at some point you are ready to go ahead and put your color coat on the car. At that point, you get your paint booth all cleaned up and you get everything mixed, and on a good day you wind up shooting the color base coat on the car and you wait the prerequisite flash times, and then you put in on 3 or 4 or 5 coats of clear. On my car I generally put on 4 coats of clear, and you go away for a while and let all that cure. And then the final step, which is also very time consuming, is you come back with very fine sanding materials, 1200 grit, 2000 grit, 3000 grit, 5000 grit, and you sand the paint down to remove the final little bit of orange peel and defects. And then when you're all done, you get to polish it. So it's quite a process. I'm not going to try and explain it all here, but if you look at the web pages in my website that are linked, it'll kind of help you go through and get a chronological feel. I'm just going to tell you, it was a big relief to get this paint job done. It always is. I checked my spreadsheet of time spent, and I've documented on the order of 1,600 hours to get the paint ready. But what you see on the finished car is just the tip of the iceberg as far as all the work that goes in underneath to make it look nice.